Well, thank you very much for joining. My name is Gurpreet Singh. I'm going to be the host, and I'm from Ethical Reading. And we're delighted to have Nick Byron, Managing Director of Robert Byron Company, who will be doing a session today. And the topic really is, when should an ethical company lie? Fascinating title. And actually, when Nick took us through his idea earlier on, I knew straight away we're going to be in for a treat there. So it's a very, very interesting topic, and I'm sure you'll be very interested to know what's in it, but also to discuss some of the ideas in the breakout rooms. So just before Nick starts, just a little bit of background on Ethical Reading. We are a not-for-profit community interest company. What that means is, in our articles of association, any money we make above and beyond operational costs has to go towards the mission of the company. And the mission of our company is to embed ethics and ethical behavior into the workplace and broader as well through individuals. We are comprised entirely of volunteers, who are a volunteer organization, have around 20 today. And our goals are to inspire, educate, and collaborate. We want to inspire people and organizations that when they make decisions, we'd like them to make them in the round, particularly in regards to the impact of those decisions on people. And we'd like to make them thinking through the values of our core values of respect, fairness, and compassion. And we have, a number of other values that we believe are important. We'd like to think that people, when they make those decisions, they think about the impact on their workforce, but also on the environment. And another of our goals is education, and we want to provide awareness, allow opportunities for people to discuss these topics, which impact everyday life. And we also have a bunch of services that are
try trampoline,
that are on our services portal, and organizations and individuals can choose to take those. One of our key goals is collaboration. We do believe working together we can achieve a lot more. So when we do things with our partners, we do things with other organizations. So the initiatives we have locally, things like planting trees in urban areas, Trees for Reading, or cycle security, to encourage cycling. We do those things in collaboration with local organisations, but particularly things like the local government, Reading Borough Council, but also private organisations. Our core programs relate to business ethics. So this is, fundamental business ethics, things like dilemmas that people may face whilst in work that's related to their vertical sector. We also have programs around sustainability. And the reason sustainability is an ethical topic is that we have obligations and duties to future generations that are just as real as our duties and obligations to ourselves and others today. We have a program around workplace well-being. And at the moment, we're working actually with one of the largest employers in the Reading area around a culture change program over 2 years. And as you can see, we do programs around Trees for Reading, and we have an initiative around ethical recruitment too. So today we're going to kick off. This is this kind of welcome, if you like. I'm going to now shortly hand over to Nick. He'll present his session roughly around about 20 minutes. We'll have a quiz, and then we'll go into breakout rooms. And in the breakout rooms, the idea here is that you discuss the topics within those groups, and then we'll ask one person to report back to the general group, and we'll carry on, share the learnings and the discussions in the individual teams. And we hope to wrap up around about 8 o'clock. But if you'd like to carry on and have a chat afterwards, we'll be around for another 15 minutes or so. So at this point, I'm delighted to welcome Nick, who is, as I said, the Managing Director of Robert Byron and Company. a local company that is an ethical company, and Nick has been a supporter of ours for a number of years now, and we're delighted to have him to talk about this topic. He has a background not only in business, and he's been running the company for many, many years, but also in philosophy. So I'm dying to understand and learn more on this topic now.
Hi, I'm Nick Byrne, as Gertrude introduced, and it's a manufacturing company that I run in Reading. And I was motivated to put this talk together after an experience of dealing with a large company that seemed to lie to me throughout the whole process of our discussions. And whatever they said one day, they felt they did not have to keep to the next day. And ironically, they assured me I was not the only person they treated like that. So I thought, is lying the new normal? Well, this is the structure of the talk I've put together. Have a look at a few incidents, examples of where people might lie, introduce you to the rotary four-way test, then have a look at what philosophy might teach us about lying, look at different types of lies and different circumstances. And I'm not going to spend time on saying whether something's a lie or a misrepresentation and spend time on that. I'm more interested in what people think we should do and what we shouldn't do. So I'll look at a few reasons why people do lie, and then some ideas of why lying is wrong. And as you've seen, then we'll go into a quiz. So I'll put you forward some scenarios for you to put your views forward anonymously, and then we'll move to the breakout rooms. So, I was brought up with the idea that you should never tell a lie. At least that's what I was taught. There was stories of Matilda, who told such dreadful lies that she was burned to death. I think things were brutal in those days. Her neighbours looked on while her house was on fire, and every time she shouted fire, they only answered little liar, and so she was burned to death. And George Washington, who, because he did not lie that he had cut down a cherry tree, that seemed to qualify him to be president of the United States. So it's important to tell the truth, and integrity was important. It was important to tell the truth at all times. So what might be the situation now? Well, I'd like to have a look at this. This is what I thought perhaps, is this the most common lie told now? Our call centres are very busy. In fact, this one here says we're extra busy. But I think you'll all know they're always extra busy. So it's not really very true, is it? Then I'll give you an example. My company negotiated a new power contract for 3 years with Scottish Power, and we believed we were getting green electricity. We were pointed to the website by the broker. In fact, so excited were we with the contract that we printed out a poster of our own and put it up in reception. About a year later, we discovered we were buying brown electricity, which they bought from elsewhere. And they explained to me that although it said 100% green generation for Scottish Power, I think it really meant by Scottish Power. This was quite in order, and we were stuck with our brown electricity. So what about the most common lie? I think actually it's this one. I have read the terms and conditions. I wonder how many of us will have ticked a box saying I've read the terms and conditions when we haven't. So, are things getting worse? Well, if you go back to the 1930s in America, Herbert J. Taylor set out to save the Club Aluminium Products Distribution Company from bankruptcy. And his recovery plan started with changing the ethical climate of the company. And he came up with a four-way test. And this is it. The four-way test is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Well, this four-way test has now been adopted by Rotary International, which started life as an ethical business club for 6 members in Chicago about 100 years ago, and now has 1.2 million members worldwide. And this four-way test is read out at meetings. In fact, I joined a meeting in Kampala, Uganda last month, and they read out the four-way test there. And the first question is it the truth? And is it just as simple as that? You know, everything we do, all our actions, communications, should pass the test of is it the truth? Well, what does philosophy tell us about lying? Well, my opinion, not a lot. I mean, most philosophy graduates who have done something in ethics will give you the example of Kant. And Kant was someone who believed that you should run your life according to universal rules. And even in the situation where you've got a murderer at the door asking whether his victim is within, then you should not lie and say he's elsewhere. You should tell the truth, even in this extreme circumstances. Mill, on the other hand, who is more concerned with the results of your actions, rather than whether the actions kept to rules, thought that it was reasonable to lie in exceptional circumstances. That really is about as much as you see on lying in philosophy. And I think there's just this basic belief that it is wrong, except in perhaps exceptional circumstances. So let's look at some different types of lying. So in terms of different lies, you can have statements that are just factually untrue. Simple lies, we might call them. Then what about this? Creating a false impression without actually saying anything factually untrue. What about allowing others to continue believing something that's untrue without saying anything to contradict it? There's been lots in the press about needing to speak out against certain things. If you just keep quiet, maybe silence means consent. And finally, the other one I put forward is making future commitments that you do not keep. So those are, an example of that would be David Cameron at the time of the last referendum. He said that he would continue to remain in office even if he lost the referendum. But he resigned on the morning of the day after. And we all might think he had there might be reasons for him saying that, but what interested me was Craig Oliver, his communications chief at the time, explained it that Cameron.
Oh, Nick, you've muted yourself.
I don't know how that's happened. Where did you miss much?
You were talking about the Nick Cameron incident.
Oh, yes. Oh, well, perhaps Craig Oliver came in there to explain that what Cameron said was actually true at the time he said it. So, what about the circumstances? Do circumstances matter in whether you should tell a lie or not? Is it different internally within your organisation or externally? Would you have a culture of always telling the truth within your organisation and an openness and honesty, but when you move outside the organisation, different rules might apply? And if you think that, can people actually departmentalise? Can someone who lies in one area be relied upon always to tell the truth in another? Is it a one-off transaction or a long-term relationship? I had experience buying a factory We bought it from a trust in the Cayman Islands, and I was advised by the solicitors that we should not rely on anything we've been told during the process. And once the people had got our money, we would never be able to see or talk to them again. As a result, we had a file about 2 inches thick of legal work done on this transaction. Similar time, we bought a production line for a similar amount of money. And we probably had 2 or 3 pages of contract, because at the end of the day, if we didn't believe what the people were telling us, we had no long-term relationship, and there would not be someone around to look after the plant that we bought going into the future. So the difference between a one-off transaction and long-term relationship makes the difference. And then finally, does the other party expect you to tell the truth? I mean, is it just part of an accepted negotiating game? Is this your final offer? Does that make a difference? So, why lie? Well, what reasons might people give? Well, everybody does. It's just part of the culture. I mean, nobody expects you to tell the truth all the time, perhaps. I mean, it's better to overpromise to get the order. It's easier to apologize than ask for permission. Easier to phone up the client afterwards to say it's just unfortunate we've not been able to get that part or do that thing that's been part of it. And perhaps that gives you a commercial advantage, get away with it. Another reason you might be pushed into lying or feeling you should is that's what your competitors do. Perhaps there's a sort of competition in, say, I would think here, miles per gallon on the car you buy. If a car company came out saying what miles per gallon you'd actually get on the car you bought, as opposed to the advertised ones, which do conform to a certain requirement, then they might find they lose out on sales. So is there a sort of pressure if your competitors are doing that? Maybe sometimes it's just socially convenient. It's easier to tell a supplier that you didn't get the contract so you couldn't give it to them, rather than saying you've gone elsewhere. I've seen that happen. Perhaps inconvenient facts get in the way of a greater truth or a greater narrative and confuse the issue. Perhaps more harm can be done if the truth gets out. Think of charities and comments on sexual abuse or something. Shouldn't they hush it up internally? Because if it gets out, charity donations will fall and maybe more people will die as a result. And then finally, last reason, perhaps going back to Kant, maybe there would be, if you refuse to answer a question or evaded it, then people might guess a truth that you didn't want them to know. If you were to say, well, I can't tell you where the murderer is, they might think that means he's inside. So, what's wrong with lying? Well, I think just picking up on Kant, lying prevents others from making rational decisions. It doesn't give other people respect, and it doesn't give them autonomy, because they don't know the truth. A very important ethical thing, I think, is in work, is for people to have meaningful work and have autonomy. But if they don't know what the truth is, they can't make correct decisions. And also, personally, is to do with your own integrity. So lying is bad for yourself, irrespective, as Kant might think, of the outcome. Truth is a basis for trust. How important is trust in your brand? And how important is trust within your workforce? And truth-telling is a far more efficient business model. If you think of the example, if I had to go through the same sort of legal process and checking out with the other business I do as I did with buying a factory, I don't think we'd still be in business. It would be just too inefficient. If you do lie, you have to spend a lot of effort, take up a lot of headspace maybe, making sure you're not contradicting yourself, because the truth is logically consistent. And what about this? When you tell the truth, you're not really responsible for what people do with that information. But when you lie, you do have a responsibility for the lie you have created. So go back to my Kant's example, he would argue you're not responsible for the murderer coming in and killing the victim. But if you think about if you'd lied and said, look, he's over there, and the murderer got out his gun and shot that person, then maybe you've got a responsibility for that person's death, some kind of responsibility, in a way that you wouldn't have if you were telling the truth. What else is wrong with lying? Well, maybe it's a slippery slope. Maybe you start with small lies, they become other larger lies. Where do you draw the line? Maybe it encourages other people within your organization to lie. If they've seen you lie in certain circumstances, they might conclude that's okay to do it in others. And finally, perhaps we begin by deceiving others and end up by deceiving ourselves. So I'm going to now move us on to a quiz. So this is anonymous, and it's just an idea to get your thoughts on it and get us thinking about things. So I've got a few scenarios for you. So let's have the first one. So I saw this on a poster promoting a housing development. The picture you see there is a mirror image. In fact, I spent a lot of time looking at this, thinking, I know this countryside well. I can't work out where that photograph's been taken from. And the person with me said, well, that's because it's a mirror image. Beautiful countryside right on your doorstep. So my question for you is, what would you do if you were in charge? Would you congratulate those responsible, as the mirror image just produces a much nicer feel? It fits well with the rest of the posters. It looks so much better. So would you congratulate those responsible for their ingenuity? Would you tell those involved not to do it again? Would you take some action to change it? Maybe, but it's not too costly. Or would you change it because just is not significant? You know, the cost is not significant. Would you just insist it be changed? So I think go over to Gertrude who will run the poll on this one.
Okay, so poll is closed. Shall I share results?
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like the most popular choice is tell those involved not to do it again, but slightly less than that would be change it, cost is not a significant issue. Very few of you, 14% would go for congratulating those involved. So have I got the screen back now? Yeah. So the next scenario is you're a photographer working for a charity. You've gone to a war zone to take pictures for the charity, and you're in this ruined city, and you see a child's teddy on the ground, and you think that'll look good in the picture. So my question for you now is, how far would you move the teddy? So would you just take a picture of the teddy of where you found it? So accurate representation of what was there. Would you move it a few meters to get a better shot, change its position, get a better view? Or would you take it with you to use later, maybe in another city or another area of the city? Well, maybe, why not? You know, take it. Why not think next time I go on a trip, I should take one with me? Because this is very emotive. So what would you do? Take the picture as is, move it a few meters, get a better shot, perhaps take it in another city in the same area, or decide you'll take one with you on your next trip. So we go to the poll. Yeah, there we have. So most of you take it, pitch just where you found it. To move it to get a better shot, but wouldn't move it to another city or another area of the city, or sign and wouldn't take it with you. Okay, so move on to the next question then. So, it's the anniversary of the lockdown today, and I've got you something topical here. Do you remember all that talk about flattening the curve at the beginning of this pandemic, and how important it was to flatten the curve? Well, here is a good way of flattening the curve. On the left-hand side, you see the graph with the linear scale. That's a sort of what you might think of as a normal graph and normal scales. And you can see the coronavirus cases are shooting up there. Quite worrying. On the right hand, you see that same graph, same information, accurately portrayed with a log scale on the graph. And as you can see, having a different scale produces this nice flattening of the curve, still going up a little bit, but nothing like the other one. So, would you use the right-hand graph in your presentation? So we have 80% say no, 20% yes. And as you may or may not record, because that was the graph that was shared in the presentation by the government. There are some good mathematical reasons why you might want to use a log scale in looking at this type of curve, but I think that perhaps, whether not for the presentation, I don't know. And then finally, which of the following misrepresentations is acceptable on your website and in your advertising? Employees who have never worked there, they're just actors. Pictures of an office environment or a call center, they're library pictures, they're not actually your office. Your office doesn't look like that. Or pictures of factory or a farm or shops or some production facility that's not used by yourselves. And finally, product that you've not made or sold. Would you be happy to have all of those on your website? So lots of you probably feel comfortable with employees being there who aren't actual employees, and maybe less comfortable with the others.
Cool.
So I think now we're into breakout rooms. And so the question for the breakout rooms is, do you have a duty to tell the truth at all times, except in exceptional circumstances? Or do you have a duty not to lie only in cases where harm is at stake? So do you have a duty not to lie only when there is harm at stake?
I'm conscious that we've come up to 8 o'clock. Do you want to sort of say any sort of final words, Nick, and then we'll sort of wrap up?
I thought I think the final words probably for other people, but I think it's the more I looked into this, the more different aspects I came up with, and perhaps how little is something that we all seem to know about and have a view on, but there's not that much written about it. And I think we're moving to a world where sort of we are going to be making more and more of these decisions, and it's I think it would define, how much it defines you as a company, as an ethical company. It is becoming more of a choice to do that.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Nick. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm just going to share final screen slide with a call to action. We'd love for you to join us. You can go to our website, which is just Google Ethical Reading, and you can sign up as a member. It's free. Then you'll be notified of all the events that we have. We're very grateful to our partners and supporters for making, enabling us to do the things that we do, events like this, and delighted actually that a couple of partners joined us today. So Nick himself is a partner, and of course Yasmin from Dynamic Planner. So that's fantastic. We are recording this. This will be available on YouTube later on if you want to refresh anything in terms of the things that we've covered today. And we're on social media, so please do follow us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a wonderful evening.